Hooray!
She's only been in American soil for 3 hours. Don't think she's leaving. Don't think she's leaving.
Who's bright stars? Oh, bright star and bright stars.
After the game, we went back to Boston, got in a cab, went to the airport to go home, and I thought, I'm not going home. I'm staying. So I get back out the taxi. I got another taxi straight back into Boston to come here to watch this game. The Boston people are amazing. It's the best city I've ever been in my life, bar none. It's incredible. The people. This is why I stayed, because you guys are just amazing.
Thinking about this holiday, and I'm thinking, I really wish I was jetting back to the States. Like, I really wish I was going to Texas or Tennessee or a southern state or like Louisiana or Nashville or something, because Europe, I think it's had enough of me.
What does it say when travelers stop booking the flight home? European airlines are reporting record one-way demand to America. And that raises a bigger question than tourism ever could. What are people finding here that makes leaving suddenly feel less urgent? Maybe the America they expected from headlines is not the America they met in real life. And if that gap keeps growing, the return ticket may be the first thing people quietly stop buying. America One Way. Something unusual is happening over the Atlantic, and the most interesting part is not how many people are flying to America, but how differently some of those journeys are beginning to look. A vacation normally comes with a return date, a hotel reservation, and a suitcase packed with the quiet certainty that home is waiting. A one-way booking carries a different kind of weight. It suggests work, study, family, relocation, or at the very least, a future that has not been neatly scheduled back across the ocean. That is why the transatlantic market deserves attention right now. Even before the latest claims about one-way demand, travel between Europe and the United States had already returned at enormous scale. US. Government tourism data showed America receiving more than 72 million international visitors in 2024, while international travelers spent roughly $254 billion inside the country that year. Those are not the numbers of a destination people are avoiding. They are the numbers of a country pulling travelers back into airports, hotels, restaurants, rental car counters, neighborhoods, and eventually, in some cases, much longer stays. And this is where the old image of America starts running into real life. European news coverage often reaches viewers through America's loudest stories: political fights in Washington, crime footage from a handful of cities, healthcare controversies, or the latest argument powerful enough to cross the Atlantic. Those stories are real and deserve coverage, but they can make a country of more than 340 million people look like one permanent cable news panel with traffic outside. Then visitors actually arrive. They discover that New York is not Kansas City, Texas is not Massachusetts, and suburban North Carolina has very little interest in behaving like downtown Los Angeles. America changes character almost every time the interstate signs change. That variety is difficult to understand from overseas because European geography works on another scale. Amsterdam to Brussels is roughly 130 miles by road. In Texas, that kind of distance can feel like the part of the drive where you are still deciding what podcast to play. There's also a practical side to America's appeal that rarely makes dramatic headlines. According to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, the American labor market contains well over 160 million jobs, spread across a continental economy where technology, healthcare, construction, logistics, energy, finance, entertainment, manufacturing, and small business can offer very different entry points depending on the state. Add the fact that Americans can relocate between 50 states without crossing an international border, and the country starts to look less like one destination and more like 50 different attempts at building a life. That does not mean Europe suddenly became undesirable, because millions of Americans would happily trade an afternoon of freeway traffic for a train platform in Switzerland or a cafe street in Vienna. The deeper story is simpler. America is often much more livable, varied, friendly, and ordinary than its overseas reputation suggests. So when one-way demand rises, the interesting question is not whether people have stopped loving home. It is why America keeps giving some of them enough reasons to postpone the return flight. The paycheck effect. A European can admire American diners, laugh at the size of the pickup trucks, and spend 20 minutes deciding whether a pharmacy really needs a parking lot that large. None of those things, however, explains why somebody would seriously consider staying. The conversation becomes much more interesting when the vacation ends, the first paycheck arrives, and America stops being a destination on Google Maps and starts behaving like an economy. That is where the United States has a powerful advantage that rarely looks exciting enough for a travel video. According to the US Census Bureau real median household income reached $80,610 in 2023, while the Bureau of Labor Statistics counted roughly 161 million non-farm payroll jobs by the middle of 2024. More important than either number is the scale underneath them. A worker is not choosing between three nearby cities with broadly similar industries. The American labor market stretches from finance in New York and technology in Austin to aerospace in Seattle, energy in Houston, healthcare in Boston, logistics around Memphis, and advanced manufacturing across the Midwest. That changes the psychology of moving. In much of Europe, crossing into another major labor market can mean crossing a national border, adapting to another language, navigating a different tax system, or rebuilding professional networks from scratch. Someone working in Madrid cannot simply wake up on Monday, accept a better offer in Copenhagen, and treat the move like changing states. Inside America, a job in Arizona, Georgia, Tennessee, or Colorado may be 1,500 miles away, yet it still sits inside the same national labor market, uses the same currency, and requires no new immigration process for an American resident with the right status. The map is enormous, but economically it behaves more like one giant neighborhood with an unreasonable commute. That flexibility becomes especially attractive when career progression enters the picture. OECD wage comparisons consistently place the United States among the higher-paying, major advanced economies, particularly in professional, technical, and managerial occupations. The trade-off is real. American workers generally receive less statutory vacation time and a thinner government safety net than employees in countries such as France or Germany. Nobody should pretend otherwise. Yet that same system often places more income and more career upside directly in the hands of the worker, which matters enormously to people who arrive during the years when they are trying to build something. This may also explain why America can become surprisingly difficult to leave once someone begins succeeding here. The attachment is not always cinematic. Sometimes it looks like a promotion that came 2 years earlier than expected, a side business that suddenly found customers, or the realization that moving to another state can reset an entire career without resetting an entire life. Paris offers extraordinary culture, Berlin offers an enviable urban lifestyle, and Vienna regularly ranks among the world's most livable cities. America is competing with genuinely excellent places, yet America has always possessed a peculiar talent for whispering one dangerous sentence into ambitious people's ears: you could try something bigger here. Once that thought starts paying the bills, the return ticket can become much easier to postpone. Built to scale. There's a moment when America stops feeling like a country and starts feeling like one enormous customer base with 50 different accents. For anyone arriving with an idea, a trade, a product, or even a tiny side hustle, that realization can be dangerously motivating because the ceiling suddenly seems much farther away. The numbers explain why. The United States has more than 340 million consumers, and US Census Bureau data put annual retail and food service sales above $7 trillion in recent years. That means a small business does not necessarily need to become international before it starts reaching a market larger than many European countries combined. A bakery concept that works in Nashville can be tested in Charlotte, Dallas, Phoenix, Denver, and Tampa without changing currency, translating the menu into 5 languages, or rebuilding the company around a different national tax system each time. Europe has the EU single market, of course, and its roughly 450 million residents make it economically formidable. Yet the experience of expanding across it can still feel much more culturally fragmented. Selling the same product in Lisbon, Warsaw, and Copenhagen may involve 3 languages, 3 different consumer habits, very different wage structures, and marketing that cannot simply be copied and pasted. Americans can argue passionately about whether Texas barbecue or Carolina barbecue deserves custody of the word barbecue, but at least everyone is paying in dollars while they argue. That seemingly boring consistency has enormous psychological value. The US Census Bureau recorded more than 5 million business applications in 2023 alone, a level far above what America was seeing before the pandemic. Most of those applications will never become the next household name, and plenty will never hire a single employee. Yet the figure reveals something deeper about American culture. Starting something of your own is treated less like an eccentric career detour and more like a perfectly normal attempt at improving your situation. That attitude can be surprisingly addictive to people coming from societies where professional identity is often more structured. Germany has its respected apprenticeship system, France has strong professional protections, and many European countries offer forms of stability Americans would gladly borrow. America brings a different temptation to the table: reinvention. You can be an employee on Friday, file paperwork for a small business, sell online from your garage, and discover 6 months later that strangers 3 states away are buying something you made at the kitchen table. Nobody promises that story will work, and American entrepreneurship can be brutally unforgiving when it does not. but the possibility feels unusually close because the surrounding culture understands the impulse. That may be one of the quieter reasons some newcomers become attached to life here. America gives ambition somewhere to run without immediately asking it to stay in its lane. In London, Amsterdam, or Munich, someone may already have a very good life. In America, they can sometimes look at that same life and wonder whether it could become twice as large. That is a difficult question to unhear once the answer begins looking possible. Space feels different. One of the easiest ways to understand why America can become strangely comfortable is to look at something people rarely brag about at dinner. How much room daily life gives you. Not luxury, not mansions, just room. OECD housing data consistently show that the United States has among the highest numbers of rooms per person in the developed world, at roughly 2.4 rooms per person, compared with about 1.9 in Germany and around 1.8 in France. That gap may sound tiny on paper, but in real life it changes almost everything. It changes how loudly a family can live, whether a guest room exists, whether storage spills into the hallway, whether a kitchen feels like a workspace or a puzzle, and whether two people can have a disagreement without both being trapped within 6 feet of the toaster. This is where the American idea of comfort becomes very physical. In cities such as Paris, Amsterdam, Milan, or central London, space has always been expensive because the cities are old, dense, and beautifully compressed. That density gives Europe many things America often struggles to recreate, including walkable streets, historic neighborhoods, and cafes that feel stitched directly into daily life. But the trade-off is obvious the moment you compare apartments. Eurostat has repeatedly reported overcrowding as a measurable housing issue across parts of Europe, particularly among younger adults and lower-income households. America answers that problem in a very American way: spread out until somebody finally has elbow room. The typical new American single-family home has exceeded 2,000 square feet for years, according to US Census construction data. Put that beside the smaller average floor areas common in Britain, France, or Italy, and suddenly everyday habits begin to make sense. The oversized refrigerator is not performing for attention, it actually fits. The laundry room is not a mysterious suburban shrine. There is simply enough square footage to give the washing machine its own address. That extra room affects people more deeply than they expect because it changes the texture of ordinary life. Groceries can be bought for a week rather than carried home every evening. Friends can stay overnight without someone unfolding a sofa in the kitchen. Children can make noise at one end of the house, while an adult works at the other. A garage can hold tools, bicycles, holiday decorations, and somehow still contain one cardboard box nobody has opened since 2014. Americans often joke about their own appetite for size, and sometimes the joke is deserved. There are cup holders that appear capable of supporting agricultural equipment. Yet the cultural instinct underneath all that scale is surprisingly simple. Personal space is treated as part of comfort, not merely as a luxury reserved for the wealthy. That can be difficult to give up once someone gets used to it. A charming apartment in Barcelona may place you closer to nightlife, cafes, and public transit than many American suburbs ever could. But after living with a larger kitchen, a spare bedroom, storage that does not require advanced geometry, and enough distance between neighbors to forget what television show they are watching, returning to tighter quarters can feel unexpectedly difficult. That is when America is too big, quietly becomes, I had no idea how much I liked having room. Service with personality. One of America's most underrated culture shocks begins with a sentence so ordinary that Americans barely notice it anymore. How's your day going? To someone coming from a more reserved service culture, that tiny question can feel almost suspiciously personal. In Germany, the Netherlands, or parts of Scandinavia, good service often means efficiency, accuracy, and leaving the customer alone unless help is needed. In America, good service frequently comes with eye contact, a joke, a refill before you ask, and a cashier who somehow knows you are buying supplies for a backyard barbecue before you have finished unloading the cart. That difference is not just about personality, it is built into the structure of American consumer culture. The United States has an enormous service economy, with service-producing industries accounting for the large majority of private sector employment, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Restaurants, hotels, retail stores, banks, airlines, entertainment venues, delivery companies, and countless local businesses all compete for repeat customers in a market where people often have several alternatives within a short drive. When customers can choose between 5 coffee shops, 3 burger places, 2 pharmacies, and a grocery store the size of a small airport terminal, friendliness becomes part of the product. That can feel strangely addictive. Take restaurants. In much of Europe, asking for repeated drink refills, major menu changes, several sauces on the side, or a very specific substitution can make a customer feel like they are negotiating a small trade agreement. In many American restaurants, customization is simply expected. The server may ask how you want the burger cooked, what cheese you prefer, whether you want fries, salad, fruit, extra pickles, no onions, dressing on the side, and somehow remain completely calm while the order slowly becomes a legal document. Americans sometimes tease this culture themselves, but there is something deeply appealing beneath the comedy. The customer is allowed to have preferences without apologizing for existing. There's also a financial reason service feels different. Tipping remains deeply woven into US restaurant culture, especially in full-service dining. According to Toast's restaurant transaction data, tips at full-service restaurants have commonly averaged around 19% in recent years. The system is debated heavily inside America, and many Europeans understandably find it confusing or uncomfortable at first. Yet one consequence is obvious. Service staff often have a strong incentive to notice customers, respond quickly, remember requests, and turn an ordinary meal into something warmer than a basic transaction. The contrast becomes especially clear beside countries where service is designed to be quieter. In Sweden, self-service ordering and minimal interaction can feel wonderfully efficient. In France, the server is generally not expected to perform friendliness like part of the entertainment. Both approaches work within their cultures. America simply takes hospitality and turns the volume knob a little farther to the right. After a while, those small interactions start doing something unexpected. The barista remembers the order. The hardware store employee walks 3 aisles over because explaining the location apparently is not enough. The waitress calls everybody Han with the confidence of someone who has adopted the entire dining room. None of that sounds important until someone leaves. Then suddenly the silence elsewhere feels a little louder. Roads without borders. There's a very American moment that sneaks up on newcomers somewhere between the second gas stop and the point where the scenery has changed 3 times, but the highway number has not. You begin to understand that distance here is not treated as an obstacle nearly as often as it is treated as an invitation. That matters more than it sounds. The United States has roughly 4 million miles of public roads according to the Federal Highway Administration, including about 49,000 miles of interstate highways. Those numbers are almost too large to picture, so it helps to shrink them down into everyday life. In Europe, a road trip from Paris to Amsterdam crosses national borders, languages, road systems, and different sets of rules. In America, a drive of comparable length might take someone from Nashville to Atlanta and still leave them in the same national system, paying in the same currency, using the same phone plan, and stopping at highway exits designed around the assumption that travelers will eventually need coffee, fuel, food, a bathroom, and possibly a bag of beef jerky the size of a sleeping bag. This is where mobility becomes cultural rather than merely practical. In much of Europe, especially around cities such as Amsterdam, Vienna, Zurich, or Copenhagen, public transportation is so deeply woven into daily life that owning a car can feel optional. That system has enormous advantages, and Americans who have stood on a Swiss platform watching a train arrive exactly when promised understand the jealousy immediately. America offers a different kind of freedom. Instead of asking where the rail line goes, the default question becomes whether there is a road. That opens up places far beyond the major urban centers. A person living in Kansas City can reach lakes, small towns, state parks, restaurants, family homes, warehouses, concert venues, or job sites without waiting for a timetable to approve the journey. In a country this large, the car does not simply move people around, it stretches the radius of what feels reachable. There's a reason Americans measure some trips in hours rather than miles. It's only 3 hours away can sound perfectly reasonable here, while in parts of Europe 3 hours could put you in another country with enough time left to complain that the coffee tastes different. The psychological effect is subtle but powerful. Once someone gets used to deciding at 8 a.m. that they want to be somewhere 200 miles away by lunch, mobility starts feeling personal. No ticket window, no transfer platform, no final train of the night quietly holding the day hostage. Of course, the trade-offs are obvious. American car dependence can be expensive, traffic can be miserable, and plenty of cities would benefit from stronger public transit. Nobody's sitting on I-95 during rush hours writing poetry about freedom. But outside those bottlenecks, the scale of the road network creates a kind of casual independence that is hard to appreciate until it becomes normal. That may be why some visitors arrive thinking American driving culture looks excessive, then 6 months later find themselves saying, with complete sincerity, it's only 90 minutes away. At that point, America has already changed their internal map. Weekend America, one reason America becomes easy to love has nothing to do with salaries, houses, or highways. It is what happens when the work week ends and the country seems to remember, almost all at once, that people are supposed to enjoy themselves. The scale of that leisure economy is enormous. According to the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, outdoor recreation alone contributed more than $1 trillion in economic output in recent years, while the National Park Service recorded hundreds of millions of recreation visits annually across its sites. That tells you something important about American life. Leisure is not treated as a tiny luxury reserved for vacations. It is woven into the normal rhythm of weekends, school breaks, road trips, family gatherings, tailgates, lakes, campgrounds, county fairs, amusement parks, beaches, hiking trails, and the sacred American tradition of buying a folding chair for an event that already provides chairs. This is where the cultural contrast becomes fascinating. A weekend in central Paris, Barcelona, or Rome can revolve around cafes, plazas, walking streets, museums, long lunches, and dense public life. Those cities are brilliant at turning urban space itself into entertainment. America often does something different. It gives leisure acreage. A Saturday may mean a lake large enough for boating, a state park with miles of trails, a backyard gathering where somebody has decided 4 people require enough smoked meat for 14, or a local festival that somehow includes live music, children climbing an inflatable obstacle course, homemade pie, pickup trucks, and a man selling handmade birdhouses within 50 yards of each other. It sounds chaotic because it is a little chaotic, but that is part of the charm. The United States also has more than 10,000 state park units across the country, in addition to its national parks and recreation areas. That matters because people do not need to fly to Yellowstone or Yosemite every time they want nature. In states such as Michigan, Tennessee, Colorado, North Carolina, and Washington, outdoor recreation can sit close enough to ordinary communities that it becomes part of normal life, rather than an annual expedition. Europe has spectacular access to nature too, from the Alps to Norway's fjords and Spain's coastline, so this is not a contest over who owns the prettier mountain. The American difference is how casually the experience is packaged into everyday living. A family can finish breakfast, throw a cooler into the car, drive out for the afternoon, grill beside a lake, come home after sunset, and somehow treat the whole thing like they merely ran an errand. That casualness is surprisingly powerful. Visitors often arrive expecting the famous landmarks because those are the images exported overseas. What they can end up missing later are the ordinary weekends, the smell of charcoal in a suburban neighborhood, strangers talking beside a food truck, children running around a local fair, a baseball game playing somewhere in the background, and the sense that nobody needs a special occasion to make the day feel like an occasion. America can be loud, oversized, and occasionally incapable of putting cheese on something without adding another layer of cheese. Yet its leisure culture carries a deeply attractive message. Life does not always need to be elegant to be enjoyed properly. Sometimes all it needs is good weather, a full cooler, somewhere to sit, and absolutely no reason to hurry home. America rarely wins people over with one dramatic moment. It happens more quietly through a better opportunity, an easier weekend, a friendlier conversation, or the simple feeling that life here has more room to grow. A one-way ticket may begin as a practical decision, but staying often becomes something more personal. If America surprised you too, tell us what changed your mind in the comments, and subscribe for more stories that reveal the country beyond the headlines.